think about all of your events happening on one day or one weekend, can you start by telling us a little bit about a command center? And more specifically, some of the communication that we use, some of the best practices to ensure that we can have multiple events taking place all at the same time in an organized way.
Depending on what the number is, and if you're able to centrally locate a command center for a physical space, that's great. For our 55 events on one day series, we have one physical command center that the team, event leaders, and the client all stay at for the length of the whole weekend, where we can answer phones, look at weather together, troubleshoot on emails or over text messages. If you're doing fewer than 55 on one day, maybe somewhere in the 10 to 15 range, even, it's okay to have a virtual command center, just as long as you have someone who your staff who's on the ground at these events all at the same time knows that they can contact, and there will be a person on the other end of that line to pick it up. So whether that's somebody working from their home office or everybody all in one place in a physical office together, having a command center that your staff knows in advance is reachable and there to troubleshoot and answer questions is critical to be able to pull off multiple events on one day.
That's great. Jake, what other tips or technology do we leverage when we're thinking about multiple events happening at the same time?
Yeah, we like to use a centralized texting platform where all of our staff can text into command. So there are multiple people in the command center monitoring this platform. And we've built in kind of base check-in points within the timeline for each event. So we use a big tracker that we kind of check off as, okay, this market ended up completing this task, and so on and so forth. So we can just check progress. If we haven't heard from somebody in a while, we can reach back out to them over text. We can send out large text reminders to even groups of people. Maybe there are, if we have a dozen events going on in the East Coast and there's wind in that area, we can send text blasts out to them. So centralizing that texting platform has been super helpful and streamlined our communication.
That's great. I also know, as somebody who's been on the ground and not in command with you all, one of the best examples I can think of is the way that you ask us to text in that the site team has arrived in the morning, so you don't have to reach out to us. That
Mhm.
the riders or the walkers have left the start line. Those little bits of communication, I think, also cut down on the number of phone calls you all are receiving, and so you've trained us pretty well to keep you up to date on certain milestones.
Yeah, we consider those our milestone moments. So the staff will know in advance. You need to let us know when the staff is on site, when registration has opened in the morning, when the walk or the ride has begun. And like Jake said, and you, Jillian, so it saves us having to chase them down on the phone and be like, hey, did everybody make it there okay? Have you started your walk yet? And then we're tracking those on a big spreadsheet so we can make sure everyone is staying up to their timeline the way they need to be,
We also get photos too, so we get the
which is
in
really
the
fun.
moment. Yeah, we get the photos in real time, and the client also likes seeing those too. So extra eyes and ears.
Now, I feel like we could talk forever about how we train people to do this, but before we dig in to that piece, when you have to plan staffing for this many events all on the same day or on the same weekend, can you talk first a little bit about the leadership structure and the staffing roles, how we're able to deploy so many staff on one day and see success across all of our events?
hmm Yeah, so we build staffing roles on event based on what type of event it is. If it's maybe a smaller walk, we have maybe two staff, up to five staff. It could even be more depending on the level. We always designate a lead, and they're the main communication funnel to command, and that's set in advance when we're booking those staff for that event. We pick that skill set. We know they maybe have some more experience, whether they're a full-time employee or one of our great folks from our Team 360 group. They're that designated staff member and lead. Then we have other positions based on whether it's a vendor manager or a site manager. Kind of just depends on what the event needs and what's in the scope of the project that's predetermined with the client.
But whatever the event is, we do make a really strong effort to standardize those roles across all the events in the series. So it's not like one event will have a vendor manager and an event lead, and another will have a route manager and a site lead. They're going to be the same across the board. And
Mm.
that really helps when it comes to training. And also for those events or those markets within an event series who are going to provide more of their staff from in-house rather than using Event 360 staff people, if the roles are standard across the board, the expectations are the same no matter who's filling the role, whether it's somebody from the client side or from our side. If they're the event manager, we've got a robust checklist of everything that person is responsible for. Same with vendor manager, site manager, regardless of where they're coming from to fill that role.
That's a great point. And since you brought up training, Erin, I want to hear a little bit about what it's like training for an event series where, let's say, everything is taking place on one weekend rather than having your walk runs spread out across an entire spring or spring and fall season. How is it different when you're thinking about the training in these scenarios?
In some ways it's easier because you get it all out of the way at once, but you have to make sure you're catching everything. It's not as if we do a training for one event this weekend and then remember, oh, we really should have mentioned this, we'll get that on the next one. They're all happening at the same time. And so we put a lot of effort in advance into plotting out the training, what it's going to look like. We record training so that staff can watch them on their own time, and then we do some in-person trainings as well. And one thing that we've implemented for our 55 event series is a Q&A session, because we have so many staff people, over 100 staff going to work that one day everywhere all over the country. They have a lot of questions come up, and even though we're having individual calls for each event in advance to let them know about the unique elements of that particular market, sometimes there's other questions that come up. So we have these open Q&A sessions, which are optional, but they've been really successful. I think people really appreciate having the opportunity to come in and read off their post-it note of things that they've written down based on the other trainings.
That's great. Jake, what about you? What have we learned about training for multi-day events like this?
Yeah, I'd say one thing that it is nice that you can do it kind of all in one go and standardize your package of training, so to speak. That's generalizing, but one of the harder things is you're trying to provide all of this information to somebody that has maybe a different set of skills than another staff member. So it's the lowest and highest common denominator. You're trying to hit that sweet spot of information. You're not trying to flood somebody with information. You're not trying to. You don't want to. You don't want to give them the lowest amount of information. You want to try to kind of provide all, and then let them pick and choose. So the training material and our event books are kind of divvied up in a way that somebody can take what they need based off of their experience.
That's a great point. Some of us have been around for quite a while now, but the training has to also speak to people who've only been with us for six
Right.
months. So
Right.
that's a really great point. One of the last things I want to think through for organizations who are considering moving all of their events to one weekend, or if you've got, just multiple events that happen to hit at the same weekend, to me, that means a lot of administrative tasks also falling at the same time in your calendar year. So, more vendors, more bills to pay, more contracts. As we think through this, what are some of the tips that you all have, or some of the ways that you can share that we manage that?
It takes a year easily to get all the details in place, especially for a series where you're doing all of the events at once. So really, it may seem like a no-brainer, but really diligent tracking of all of these details becomes important. Not just because you have to have those in one place for multiple stakeholders to look in on. Purchasing needs to know about it. The client needs to know. Production needs to know. But also because when you are focused on such a big picture at once, it's easy for things to slip through the cracks. So make sure before you even book a single vendor or reserve a single site, you've got your tracking documents all in place. Everyone knows where to find them. Everyone knows how to update them, and then keep on top of those. Check them for quality repeatedly throughout the year to make sure nothing has been missed. Get multiple eyes and ears, as Jake said before.
In this scenario, the events are on one day. Managing the budget is very important. And it can have its advantages and disadvantages. An advantage to doing all of this on one weekend is every event kind of goes through the same kind of cash flow, procurement, reconciliation. It just gives you less time to react. But doing year after year, you're able to plan ahead, and you can account for any variances because you know they're coming because you've done it year after year. But I would say there's just a big benefit in doing this from a cash flow perspective because everything's following the same path, a little more predictable.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing some of your insights with our summer school attendees today. To the organizations out there, as you're thinking through planning your events for 2026 and 2027, and if you're exploring kind of switching from a seasonal model with your events to putting a bunch of them on the same day and want to hear more about the kind of challenges and opportunities that come along with that, don't hesitate to reach out. Our experts, they've seen it all. So we're happy to talk more about any of this.